Robin Williams dropped the microphone. Silence. 2,000 people held their breath. But no one knew that this moment was the end of a story that had begun years ago. The Apollo Theater, New York City, 1996. A sold-out comedy show. Robin Williams was at the peak of his career. Mrs. Doubtfire had made him a household name. Good Will Hunting was about to change his life forever. But that night, something happened that no camera captured, no journalist wrote about, and no one in that audience would ever forget. Robin was mid-joke, his voice ricocheting off the walls with that unmistakable energy, that chaotic genius that made him one of the greatest performers alive. The crowd was roaring. Laughter filled every corner of the theater. And then, without warning, he stopped. Not a pause for effect. Not a comedic beat. A full stop. His eyes locked onto someone in the third row. A man. Middle-aged. Wearing a faded jacket. Holding something in his hands. Robin's face changed. The mask of the comedian slipped, just for a second, and underneath it was something raw. Something human. But what Robin saw in that moment would take him back 30 years, to a promise he thought he'd never have to keep. If you want to know how this story ends, hit subscribe now, because the most powerful moment of Robin's life is still ahead. It was 1967. Robin Williams was not yet Robin Williams. He was a shy, awkward teenager in Marin County, California, trying to find his place in a world that felt too big and too quiet. His father was a Ford executive, often absent. His mother was elegant but distant. Robin spent most of his childhood alone in a large, empty house, creating characters to fill the silence. He discovered theater in high school. Not because he wanted to be famous, but because on stage, he could be someone else. Someone confident. Someone loved. And for a boy who felt invisible in his own home, that was everything. One day, during rehearsal for a school play, a kid named Danny approached him. Danny was small, pale, and wore glasses that were too big for his face. He had a backpack covered in patches and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. "You're really good," Danny said quietly. Robin shrugged. "Thanks. Do you think being funny can help people? Like really help them?" Robin looked at him, surprised. "I don't know. Maybe." Danny nodded like that answer meant something important. "I think it can. I think people need it more than they know." They became friends. Not close friends, but the kind of friends who understood each other without saying much. Danny was sick. Robin didn't know the details, but he knew enough. Danny missed school often. He was tired a lot. But whenever Robin performed, Danny was there, sitting in the back row, laughing louder than anyone else. One afternoon, after a performance, Danny handed Robin a small envelope. "Don't open it now," Danny said. "Open it when you need it." Robin tucked it into his jacket pocket and forgot about it. A few weeks later, Danny stopped coming to school. Robin heard later that he had passed away. He was 14 years old. Robin never opened the envelope. He carried it with him for years, moving it from jacket to jacket, drawer to drawer, unable to throw it away but too afraid to read it. Until that night at the Apollo Theater. The man in the third row stood up. The entire audience turned to look at him. Robin froze on stage, his hands still holding the microphone, his eyes wide. The man didn't say anything at first. He just held up a small, worn photograph. Even from the stage, Robin recognized it. It was a picture from that high school play. Robin on stage, arms spread wide, mid-laugh. And in the corner of the photo, barely visible, was Danny, smiling. Robin's breath caught in his throat. The man spoke, his voice shaking. "My name is Michael. Danny was my brother." The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning hum. "He told me about you," Michael continued. "He said you made him laugh when everything hurt. He said you gave him something to look forward to." His voice broke. "He died believing that people like you could change the world. And I needed you to know that." Robin stood there, completely still. The comedian, the improviser, the man who always had a comeback, had no words. And then, something inside him broke open. He walked to the edge of the stage, slowly, as if moving through water. He sat down, legs dangling over the edge, and for the first time in his career, he stopped performing. "I knew Danny," Robin said quietly. His voice was different now. Softer. Honest. "He gave me a letter once. I never opened it." The audience was transfixed. "I was scared," Robin admitted. "I didn't want to know what it said. Because if I read it, it would make it real. It would mean he was really gone." He reached into his jacket pocket. After all these years, he still carried it. The small envelope, yellowed with age, the ink faded but still readable. "For Robin. When you need it." His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded twice. Robin unfolded it carefully, as if it might disintegrate in his hands. And then he read it. Out loud. "Dear Robin. If you're reading this, it means I'm not around anymore. That's okay. I'm not scared. But I wanted to tell you something before I go. You think you're just making people laugh. But you're doing something bigger. You're reminding them that it's okay to feel. That it's okay to be sad and still smile. That even when everything is terrible, there's still a reason to keep going. You did that for me. So please don't stop. Even when it's hard. Even when you don't feel like it. Because the world needs people like you. People who can turn pain into something beautiful. Thank you for being my friend. Danny." Robin's voice cracked on the last line. He folded the letter carefully, his hands still shaking, and looked up at Michael. "Thank you," Robin whispered. "Thank you for finding me." Michael nodded, tears streaming down his face. And then, slowly, the entire audience stood up. Not to applaud. Not to cheer. Just to stand with him. In silence. In shared grief. In recognition of something bigger than comedy, bigger than fame, bigger than any of them. Robin sat there on the edge of the stage for a long time, holding that letter, surrounded by 2,000 strangers who, in that moment, felt like family. When he finally stood up, he didn't make a joke. He didn't try to lighten the mood. He just looked out at the audience and said, "This is why we do it. This is why any of it matters." And then he walked off stage. The show didn't continue. The audience left in silence, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind of silence that follows something sacred. Something true. Backstage, Michael found Robin. They didn't say much. They didn't need to. Michael handed him the photograph, the one of Danny smiling in the corner of that high school play. "Keep it," Michael said. "He'd want you to have it." Robin took it, carefully, like it was made of glass. "I'll never forget him," Robin said. "I know," Michael replied. "And now, because of you, either will anyone else." Years later, Robin would talk about that night in interviews, though not often. He would say that it was the moment he understood the difference between being funny and being human. That comedy wasn't about escaping pain, it was about transforming it. That laughter wasn't the opposite of sadness, it was the bridge between suffering and hope. But what most people didn't know was what happened in the weeks following that night. Robin couldn't stop thinking about Danny. About Michael. About that letter he'd carried for 30 years without opening. He began to wonder how many other people were out there, carrying their own unopened letters. Their own unspoken grief. Their own silent battles. One morning, he made a decision. He started visiting children's hospitals. Not for publicity. Not with cameras following him. Just Robin, walking into rooms where kids were fighting battles that most adults couldn't imagine. He would sit with them, make them laugh, but more importantly, he would listen. Really listen. Because Danny had taught him something that no acting class ever could, that being present for someone's pain was just as important as making them laugh. There was a girl named Sarah in Boston Children's Hospital. She was 9 years old, fighting leukemia, and she refused to speak. Not to doctors. Not to her parents. She had given up. Robin spent 3 hours with her. He didn't try to make her laugh at first. He just sat there, on the floor next to her bed, and told her about Danny. About the letter. About how sometimes the hardest thing in the world is to keep hoping when everything feels hopeless. And then, quietly, Sarah spoke. "Do you think he knew?" she asked. "Danny. Do you think he knew how much he mattered to you?" Robin's eyes filled with tears. "I hope so. But I wish I'd told him more." Sarah nodded. "I want people to know they matter. Before it's too late." That conversation changed Robin. It reminded him that his gift wasn't just comedy. It was connection. It was the ability to make people feel seen, heard, and valued in a world that often made them feel invisible. He kept Danny's letter in his wallet. And next to it, he kept a photo that Sarah's mother had given him weeks later. It was a picture of Sarah, smiling for the first time in months, holding a drawing she made. It was a picture of Robin, with the words, "You made me want to keep going." Sarah passed away 6 months later. But before she did, she wrote letters to her family, her friends, her nurses. Because Robin had shown her that words, even when they're hard to say, have the power to heal. Robin carried both stories with him. Danny's and Sarah's. They became the compass that guided him through his darkest moments. When the weight of fame felt crushing, when the expectations felt impossible, when his own battles with depression threatened to pull him under, he would remember them. He would remember that he wasn't just an entertainer. He was a reminder that humanity, at its core, is about showing up for each other. About being brave enough to say, "I see you. You matter. You're not alone." And that realization became the most important performance of his life, the one that happened off stage, in quiet moments, when no one was watching. The night at the Apollo Theater became legend among those who were there. People would tell their friends, their children, their grandchildren about the night Robin Williams stopped being a comedian and became something more. A witness. A friend. A mirror reflecting back the truth that we're all carrying something heavy, and that sharing that weight makes it lighter. Michael stayed in touch with Robin for years. They would meet for coffee whenever Robin was in New York. They never talked about fame or movies or awards. They talked about Danny. About loss. About how to keep living when someone you love is gone. "He would have been so proud of you," Michael said once. Robin shook his head. "No. I'm proud of him. He taught me everything that matters." One afternoon in 2003, Michael brought something to their meeting. A small box, wrapped in brown paper, tied with string that had yellowed with age. "I found this when I was cleaning out my parents' house," Michael said, sliding it across the table. "It's Danny's. I thought you should have it." Robin opened it carefully. Inside was a collection of things that seemed random at first. Ticket stubs from school plays, a worn program from a performance, photographs of Robin on stage, and a small notebook. Robin opened the notebook with trembling hands. It was Danny's journal. Page after page of entries about Robin's performances. About how each show had given Danny something to hold on to. About how laughter had become his medicine when nothing else worked. And on the last page, dated 2 days before Danny passed away, was a final entry. "I'm scared. But I'm also grateful. Because Robin showed me that even when you're scared, you can still choose joy. You can still choose to make others smile. That's the only kind of bravery that really matters. I hope he never stops. The world needs him more than he knows." Robin read it twice. Then a third time. His hands were shaking so hard that Michael gently took the notebook and set it down on the table between them. "He saw you, Robin," Michael said quietly. "The real you. Not the celebrity. Not the comedian. The person who cared enough to show up, even when no one was asking you to." That notebook became Robin's most treasured possession. He kept it in a safe in his home, and on the hardest days, when the weight of everything felt unbearable, he would read those pages. Danny's words became a lifeline, pulling him back from edges he didn't know he was standing on. In 2009, Robin returned to the Apollo Theater. It was the first time since that night in 1996. He stood on the same stage, looked out at a different audience, and told them Danny's story. He told them about the letter, about Sarah, about Michael, about the notebook. "I used to think comedy was about making people forget their pain," Robin said, his voice steady but soft. "But Danny taught me something better. Comedy isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering that we're all in this together. That pain doesn't make us broken, it makes us human. And being human is the most beautiful, terrifying, precious thing we'll ever be." The audience didn't laugh. They didn't need to. Some cried. Many sat in silence, absorbing the weight of what he just shared. And when Robin walked off stage that night, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. Because he had finally understood what Danny had been trying to tell him all along. That the greatest gift we can give each other isn't perfection or strength or endless happiness. It's presence. It's showing up, even when it's hard. It's saying, "I see you and you matter," and meaning it with every fiber of your being. Robin never stopped carrying Danny's letter. And he never stopped visiting hospitals, sitting with kids who needed someone to remind them that they weren't alone. He never publicized these visits. He never sought recognition for them. Because it wasn't about him. It was about them. About honoring a promise he'd made without words, decades ago, to a boy who believed that kindness could change the world. And in the end, maybe that's exactly what it did. Because Danny had been right. The world needed people who could turn pain into something beautiful. And Robin Williams spent the rest of his life trying to be that person. If this story moved you, share it. Subscribe so his legacy will never be forgotten. Because the greatest gift Robin Williams gave us wasn't laughter. It was permission to feel everything, deeply and honestly, and to know that we're not alone. This video is a fictional dramatization inspired by real public appearances of Robin Williams. It is created for educational and inspirational purposes and is not intended to misrepresent or harm anyone's memory.